Online research has totally changed the game for us, right? It's fast, we can reach a massive number of people, and connect with communities we never could before. But there's a pretty big catch, a hidden threat that can, well, totally mess up our data. I'm talking about non-genuine participants. So, what are we going to do about it? So, let me ask you this directly. Is your data as real as you think? It's a tough question, I know, but we have to face it. Especially if you're a researcher or on an ethics committee, you know that good data is everything. So today, we're going to dig into this challenge and really figure out what we're up against. All right, here's the plan. First, we'll look at the problem itself, like who are these people? Then we'll get into the impact, and trust me, the cost of bad data is high. After that, we'll switch gears to the solution, a whole toolkit of practical things you can do. And finally, we'll talk about that tricky balancing act between getting solid data and being inclusive. Okay, so who exactly are we talking about here? Well, it's not just one type of person. This whole issue of non-genuine participation really breaks down into about 5 main categories, and each one can seriously mess with the study's results. Let's get into them. First up, we've got what we call inauthentic participants. These are folks who just straight up lie to get into a study. Like someone claiming they have a specific medical condition when they absolutely don't, just to check a box on the recruitment form. It's a total fabrication from the get-go. Next, you have the repeat responders. These are the people who will create like 5 different email addresses and online profiles just to take the same study again and again. A lot of the time, it's for the money, sure, but sometimes it's because they want to keep getting access to whatever the study is offering, and that just skews the data completely. All right, this next one's a little more subtle. It's called eligibility misrepresentation. This isn't an outright lie, but more like stretching the truth. So imagine you're doing a study on parents of newborns. Someone with a 6-month-old might just, fudge the dates a little to get in. They're bending the rules to qualify. And then there's participant disengagement. Okay, so these people might actually be eligible for the study, but they're just not there. They're checked out, clicking random answers, speeding through the survey without even reading the questions. All this does is fill your data set with junk, with noise, and it can be really, really hard to catch. And last but not least, we have the tech problem. Bots. Yep, automated software programs designed to look like a person and fill out surveys. They can complete hundreds, maybe thousands of them in no time at all. It's a total high-volume, zero-quality data nightmare for researchers. Okay, so now we know who we're dealing with. But what's the real damage here? How bad can it get? Well, let's take a look at the actual consequences. We've got some pretty shocking case studies from researchers at the University of Nottingham that really paint a picture. Just look at this table. It really shows you how big and widespread this problem is. I mean, look at those numbers. 67%, 89%, and in one case, 100% of participants were identified as non-genuine. Wow. And it's not just one type of research either. This is happening across the board, in interviews, big surveys, focus groups, you name it. 94.5%. Seriously, just let that sink in for a second. In one study, that was the percentage of bogus participants they got in just 7 hours from a single ad on Twitter. It just goes to show you how terrifyingly fast your project can get completely swamped. And then you get to the worst case scenario, 100%. This number comes from an interview study where they recruited 54 people, and every single one was suspected of being non-genuine. So what was the result? Absolutely zero usable data. The whole project was a complete wash. And look, this isn't just about spreadsheets and statistics. There's a real human cost here. This quote is about a master's student whose project was just destroyed by this. Can you imagine? All that time and money wasted, the incredible stress, and just the crushing disappointment of having your chance to actually contribute something meaningful just snatched away. Okay, so things look pretty grim, I know, but it is not a hopeless situation. The key here is to get ahead of the problem, to be proactive, not reactive. So let's shift gears and talk about the solution. We've got a whole toolkit of things researchers can do to protect their work at every single stage. The thing is, you can't just think about this at one point in your project. You have to think about data integrity from start to finish. The best defense is a layered one, right? You need strategies in place before you collect data, during data collection, and even after all the data is in. So before you even think about launching, it's all about the prep work. First, you need a protocol, a clear plan for what you're going to do when you find suspicious data. You also need to be upfront about it in your participant documents and really think about your recruitment ads. Maybe avoid using words like payment or cash on social media, and definitely use technical tools like CAPTCHA to weed out the bots. All right, now your data is starting to roll in. You can't just sit back and relax. You have to be watching it like a hawk. Don't wait until the very end to check everything. A great tip is to do your recruitment in waves so you can catch problems early. Keep an eye out for weird inconsistencies or people who finish a 30-minute survey in 3 minutes. You could even do quick verification calls. Or my personal favorite, ask open-ended questions that only a real insider would know the answer to. And even when you've collected all your data, you're still not done. You've got to review everything before you start your analysis. And here is a super important tip. Do not send out payments or incentives until you have verified the data is legit. Seriously. And finally, you have to be transparent. Keep a record of all the data you had to throw out and talk about these challenges in your publications. It helps all of us learn how to fight this. So all these strategies are great and they're super important for individual researchers. But if we're really going to tackle this problem for good, it takes more than that. This can't just be on the shoulders of one person. It's really a collective responsibility. The entire research community has to get involved. And this is where it gets really tricky, because every solution creates its own little ethical dilemma. It's a constant balancing act. Like, okay, you could require a formal ID to prove who someone is. But what about vulnerable people who don't have one? Or you could track IP addresses to stop repeat responders. But what if two sisters in the same house both genuinely want to take part? And trying to test someone's lived experience can feel really insulting and might scare away genuine participants. See? There are no simple, perfect answers here. And that's exactly why everyone needs to step up. Researchers, you've got to plan and budget for this stuff right from the grant proposal. Ethics committees, you need to be supportive when researchers propose these kinds of reasonable checks. Funders, you've got to provide the resources to do this data integrity work properly. And institutions, you can provide the training and support to make it all happen. It really is a team effort. So we want to leave you with this final thought. Online research is incredibly powerful. We all know that. But with that power comes a massive responsibility to protect its credibility. This isn't just about finding clever new techniques. It's about making hard, thoughtful, ethical choices every single day. So the question for you is, in your own work, in your own institution, how are you going to strike that vital balance between ensuring data integrity and fostering inclusivity?